Tēnā tātou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. I'm Steve Chadwick. I'm the chair of our 6th day of hearings today on the People's Select Committee. And before we begin today, I just want to let you know in its perspective that we're made up of former members of Parliament from right across the political spectrum. We've come together to ensure that your voices are heard on matters relating to the Equal Pay Amendment Bill 2025, because it was passed under urgency without any public consultation. We're here to do actually what the government didn't do: invite public submissions to allow open and transparent scrutiny by hearing directly from those affected alongside the wider public. And we aim to consider the regulatory, the social impacts of the bill, and we're going to do it with fairness and integrity. On that note, this is a People's Select Committee. It's actually the first of its kind, and we're very proud of that. We'd like to stress that we operate under the ordinary laws and jurisdiction of the country, and there are no special privileges accorded to ourselves or to you, the submitters. In that vein, we ask that any comments that are defamatory are refrained, and we do look at submissions to make sure that we don't stray from that boundary. All electronic copies of the submissions will be released after the hearing scheduled today. We, the committee, would really like to acknowledge the women and the champions in those footsteps we follow, irrespective of their position, their role, their contribution to society, their ethnicity, but they have collectively advanced women's rights, women's work, and pay equity. They are the shoes of this kaupapa, and they are us, and we are them. Could I also acknowledge the leadership of Dame Marilyn Waring? She'll be very whakamau that I sought her out, but she got us together, and I mihi to you, Dame Marilyn, for that. So today we're joined by Dame Marilyn Waring, the Honourable Leanne Dalziel as an apology, Belinda Vernon, Lynn Pillay, Rhea Bond, and Jackie Blue. We've got apologies today from Nanaya Mahuta, Joe Hayes, and at this stage, Sue Bradford and Leanne Dalziel. So that is us. And before we begin, we always start with a karakia. And because we don't have Nanaya here, I'm quite happy to do that, if that's all right by the committee. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, I hei aki ana I te atakura, hei teo hei hoka, hei hohu, ti hei Māori ora. So the breath of life comes into our submissions today. So without any further ado, we've done the introductions. I'd now like to go to our first cluster. I hear that you're clustered together, and first beginning with Catherine Delahunty. And Catherine, can we mihi to you? Catherine was a Member of Parliament for the Green Party from 2008 until 2017. An activist and a writer, and we look forward to hearing from you, and we understand that you've got Denise and Michelle with you. Over to you. Thanks, Catherine.
Oh, kia ora, Stevie. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa, wahine toa. My privilege to be here this morning, both with my friends in the Hauraki here, but also with yourselves, and just acknowledging the opportunity that you're creating for us, and our anger and our protests outside our MP's office have all been happening, but this is an opportunity to give voice to some of our experience. So thank you so much. Ever since counting for nothing, the absolutely fundamentally most important definition of the situation, that thank you, Marilyn, for that, we have been aware of the words that are needed to change this. So I'm going to, my two mates are going to be very local and very global. But I'm just going to make some generic comments because I just want to have solidarity with this committee. It's lovely to see all the faces again of people I've worked with in the past. So mihi to you all. A couple of months ago, my partner broke his leg very badly, and ACC sent in a cleaner once a week. She's paid under ACC rules $31 an hour. The same month, I've been fighting mining companies just for a change, and we had a fast track case where we hired an economist, and his discounted rate is $550 an hour. So this is the world that we live in. And I think that pay equity is such a huge topic because it's more than just improving the pay rates of cleaners, many of whom get $23.50. ACC does a bit better. And then the male-dominated professions, the inequity between those wage bands is just phenomenal. And that was a good reminder for me of how capitalism is based on the free and often voluntary work of women, but also on low wages, how essential low wages are to this the system that we live under. So I want to change the system as well as this law. So ambitious, necessary. I'd like to talk about a couple of things, though, that I mentioned in my brief written submission. You know, the bromance between capitalism, misogyny, and racism, which has led to another mutation in suppressing women's entitlement to fair pay. And in 2011, when I was in the Parliament, my equity and transparency bill that I put forward into the biscuit box, some of you will remember because you were there, caused a bit of a furore. And what I learned from that was that at a deep level, pay equity is about a refusal to put money in because it's much cheaper to exploit us. It's much cheaper to exploit our labour. And so although the head of the Employers and Manufacturers Association at the time, Alistair Thompson, told me, Forbes, that women don't deserve pay equity because we're biologically incapable of working because of menstruation and is in a rigorous way like men. That's the shallow mythological reasoning behind the deeper issue. And the deeper issue is it's much easier to keep in government and avoid taxing the rich by actually exploiting women. And that's what I learned from that experience. Not that anyone really believes in Alistair's hysteria and misogyny, but that underneath that, the employers and manufacturers weren't going to support transparency around gender pay equity because they don't want to pay for it. So the other couple of things I wanted to mention, because really I don't want to talk for long, is I work in the community here in Hauraki, and I work with a group that we created called the Basket Hauraki, and we do food redistribution and we teach te tiriti waitangi, and we are very, very much a grassroots ally group working with tangata whenua in our community. And what I want to say about that is that charity will never create equity. So although I work in a group where we redistribute food, we grow food with people and we share food, no matter how many people you teach how to grow pumpkins, in a money economy, people need money and they need to be paid fairly for what they do, and that does not happen. So I just want to make that point about the community sector tries very hard. We're grossly underfunded. You know, COGS grants are now down to $1,000 a year if you're lucky. And this is primarily women's work, of course, in the community sector. But for women themselves and for children, we will never get equity out of charity. The rich love charity, makes them feel good, but it does not change the fundamental issue, which is we have to have pay equity in order to achieve this. Are there any questions? That's enough from me for a start. I'll hand it over to my mates.
Thank you, Catherine. And we'll take questions at the end. We like to hear from you first. All submitters, we take questions at the end.
Oh, right. So when you say the end,
no. After you finished your,
I finished, Stevie. I'm not the expert in the field.
We thought you'd love to run.
No, you would think.
Yes,
but I'm on my deadline.
Are there any questions on Catherine's submission? Yes, Jackie.
Hi, Catherine. You
Hey,
made some
Jackie.
really, hi, lovely to see you. And that you made some powerful comments, such as in a money economy, you need money, and it's cheaper to exploit women's labour. That really struck home. I just wondered, what do you think? Well, what do you think the motives were for the government to do what they did? What was really driving that?
Well, the problem with people with free market economy thinking is that humans don't really matter. So, Brooke Van Velden, actually, and the people behind all of this, they look at the hole in the coalition and financial deficit. They've promised tax cuts to the rich. They've got to pay for them. And what is a way of moving a lump of money over to pay for what they promised for the people that really matter, which is the rich. So they just decided to cut women's pay equity because they can. And as I say, that's their economic narrative. The economic narrative of women are if only we learn to advocate for ourselves and be better in job interviews, we'd all have pay equity. So they just want to help the people who keep them in power, and that's not women.
It seems quite short-sighted, Catherine. I wasn't at Monday's submission, and maybe one of the other panelists might ask a question, but the youth were very powerful in their submissions, very concerned about pay equity and the fact that it could change their career. If we were to track how money might go now in pay rates going forward without pay equity, that might change and where are we going to find the carers when people are exiting or not even thinking it as a career? But
Exactly.
yeah, I'll hand over to
Okay.
another question. Thanks,
Kia ora, Jackie. Excellent.
And we've got Lynn with a question.
And you're on mute.
And you're on mute.
Sorry, Catherine. Lovely to
Oh,
see
good.
you. You've given us some wonderful lines there. I love the bromance line, and I'll be using that. But my question is, in terms of the work you're doing in the community, obviously you've got your male friends, colleagues. I know the government seems to have a real problem grasping the fundamentals of pay equity, but we've heard from some amazing young women a couple of days ago who at their very tender years completely had their heads around it. And I just wondered, in terms of the men that you engage with, what their understanding and what their feelings are on it.
Yeah, interesting question. So we have been protesting and we've been running groups in this community, basically alongside Wahine Toa. I can think of 3 men that regularly turn up out of about 15 or 20 women, or we're a small community. Not very many men stand with women in real terms because there isn't any status or money in it. So I'm quite cynical about the patriarchy. I don't actually think that it's going to be through that. There are some very good men in our community who work with us, but they are very few. And basically, like I work across issues. So I work on the environment movement. There's a lot more men that will be visible on that issue. We've had good turnouts. I mean, ironically, we did have a good turnout when the first bill came out. The bill was first announced. We protested outside Scott Simpson's office. And in fact, a man tried to organise that protest without talking to any women. So that was kind of funny. But, I mean, best intentions. But I think, we're very clear in our community. We had the privilege quite a few years ago. Marilyn came to our community and helped us really strengthen women's commitment to leadership and political office. And we will work with everybody in our community, full stop. But in the community sector where I am, and in the organising around this, it is primarily women and some men who have a holistic analysis of neoliberalism and what the problems of the free market are. But there's a lot of complacent men, and you know, I'm living in a fairly conservative area, and the other day I was doing a stall on something and a guy told me that he wouldn't sign my petition because I was a girl. You know, yoo-hoo, 2025. Thanks for the question.
We haven't changed much, have we? The impact that all of us have been trying to achieve. Thank you. So that's the questions. And then I think, which order would you like to go? Is it Denise, Denise is the CEO of Te Whāriki Manawahine or Hauraki. Is she here?
Actually, well, yeah, she's here. We'll actually go with Michelle. Denise would like
All
to
right.
go first. So,
All right.
you know, I'll just jump out. Hey, thank you. Lovely to see you all. Thank you for your amazing work. And you know, I don't feel hopeless because I think we've got a lot of power. We just need to use it. Kia ora.
Thank you. Michelle.
Kia ora.
Welcome. Welcome.
Kia ora.
It's the time is yours, Michelle.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk. This is just an amazing thing that you are doing for us in New Zealand. I'm just going to read mine. I've sent you a lot of the factual information from an NGO perspective. Yes. And so I'm just going to talk from my heart about how I feel. And Lynn, you might recognise where I'm sitting. My name is Michelle Fell. I'm a feminist. I'm 71 years old, the mother of 4 adult children and 2 beautiful granddaughters. I grew up in a large family with 7 siblings, a Catholic family where social justice and debate were to the fore. Our father encouraged his 4 daughters to get a good education, so we were independent of men. I was a nurse and a midwife for 50 years. I'm retired now from paid work. 95% of that time as a public health nurse, district nurse, and domiciliary midwife. I've been involved in community development and governance in the NGO sector for 44 years. My comments today are based on my experience in the health and NGO sector. To say I am angry at where we're at with pay equity is an understatement. This legislation halting pay equity claims in their tracks and effectively making it nearly impossible for new claims to proceed tells me this government do not believe and are not committed to women. This was a deliberate decision to not support women as equal. If this government was committed to equity, pay equity would be seen as essential. Women and their children and families are yet again punished and pushed to the bottom of the heap. This government can spend $671 million on scrapping the ferries, $3 billion on landlord cuts, $9 billion on new defence spending, but cannot give this country's women equality. This indicates that we count for nothing. Living and working in this area of Hauraki, I see the poverty, the inequality. It is in my face every day. Governments over the years devolved essential services like health from hospitals to the community, early discharge post-birth, often immediate discharge from birth, with little aftercare due to lack of midwives, due to their stress and due to the lack of support and money. Discharges early from acute hospital services to the community impact on the women, the mothers, the wives, the sisters who pick up the caring responsibility and cost. They get some small relief from the overworked, underpaid caregivers. In small rural communities, this becomes a huge burden. These women are trying to support their families and the families they are working with, travelling huge distances and giving their all. Would this happen if the women at home, people at home were men, if the caregivers were men? Many of these women work 7 days a week to try and make ends meet. I know these women. They are my neighbours, my friends, and my colleagues. In the NGO sector, sometimes 45% of staff in an organisation now have pay equity, and 55% do not, and are unlikely to receive it in the next years due to this change in legislation. How do I, as a chairperson of a social service agency, cope with that in our governance group, within our management, and within staff relationships? These staff aren't strangers in a big building somewhere. They are neighbours, sisters, daughters, friends. This is in my face every day. Sitting around the table at board meetings trying to figure out how and where we could get the money to bring the rest of those up to parity is heartbreaking. Attracting skilled, qualified staff to rural New Zealand is difficult. We work hard at looking after our staff who are loyal and hardworking. They daily see the women, children and whānau experiencing poverty and working alongside them. Male organisations do not have these difficulties. They do not have these conversations. Men benefit by women not having equality. NGOs and Hauraki are providing core government work. We have to meet contract figures and spend hours preparing tenders and are constantly proving to these departments that what we are achieving and how we are spending their money. We never receive 100% funding. What government department or business service relies on 80% funding? We are never paid for management or administration. We are expected to find that money from charity. Some community organisations have thought to pay their staff pay equity rates across the board with no guarantee of funding. They are now rushing around trying to find the money. Some could lose staff, some already have, and some are closing. Who is affected by this? Women and children and our community. Waiting lists build because we can't access skilled staff and funding for the specialised services that we need. We have used our own resources to do the work of government services because we know the need is urgent. We see these people every day. It's impossible to walk away. My father, after experiencing the horrors of World War II, wanted his children to grow up in a just and peaceful society. He saw that equity between women and men was part of building that kind of society. How sad he would be to see, 75 years later, the hurt these changes are causing.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. Well, I think your passion shows, and always a carer, a midwife, and running an NGO. So thank you for your mahi. Are there any questions of Michelle? And thank you for your detailed submission too.
Yeah, thank you.
Jackie, audio.
Thank you, Michelle. I agree with Steve. That was a really powerful, passionate submission. You talk about lots of hurdles that the NGOs need to leap over to get whatever bits of money they can get, and that some are paying their staff pay parity and are at risk of folding on the back of that because they're trying to find more money. And in your particular organisation that you're a member of or a part of the governance group, how much longer can you last before you have to fold or walk away? I know that you don't want to do that. You can't do that. You see the need is there. But at the end of the day, what is going to be the breaking point for you?
Well, it's not going to be a breaking point for us because we've been operating for 40 years and we're in a stable position, and we haven't put ourselves in a position where we have to find that money. So at the moment, we have a group of staff who aren't being paid pay equity. And that's our challenge, is to where are we going to get that money? How are we going to? So there's a group of our staff who are going to be in the next group of people applying for pay equity, following up from the social services sector. And that actually is all on hold at the moment. I mean, we're going to watch with interest how NZNO get on with the hospice nurses, aren't we? That's going to be interesting. We don't have the funding to pursue those things. Like big organisations like NZNO and PSA and CTU have money behind them, but NGOs don't have 500,000 to pursue a claim. So I think that we will continue to do what we're doing, and what we do is we eke out money from wherever we can to put towards pay equity. And our staff understand that, and some of them we will lose because of it.
Yeah.
But most of them are incredibly loyal to being here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Two more questions here. Marilyn.
Kia ora, thank you so much for your submission, Michelle. We're hearing later today from the PPTA again about this issue of trying to manage people, some of whom have received a pay equity claim and others whose equity claims were cancelled, and the really difficult load that is putting on managers. And if you've got anything more you'd like, so this is a consistent thread now. and it's not acknowledged anywhere at all, anywhere in the debates in 2025. So I think it's especially important for us to get a real handle on this. So if there's anything more you'd like to say to us now or in writing about that, I'd be very grateful.
Look, we will send something to you in writing. I think, you know, in a small rural area, we know these people, you know, like we know who we're employing, we know their families. You walk down the street here and you know these people. And I'm the chair of the governance committee, and we have an amazing team of 7 women who are absolutely committed to this organisation and committed to change. And we have a manager who is totally committed, and we're going to try and do the best we can, but it's totally unfair.
Hanging on a thread.
Hanging on a thread and leaving us in the position to management. And I would love to see a government minister put in this position where he's actually saying to half his staff, I'm sorry, I can't pay you the same as the other people. You know, it's bullshit, actually. And that's the position. And when I talk passionately about this being a women's issue, it absolutely is. The NGOs are mostly women's organisations. And what are we working for? We're working for equity for women and children. We're working to prevent male violence. And this is another form of male violence.
Thank you, Michelle. And we've got Lynn, but I do want to fit in Denise too. She's the third submitter. So a quick question, Lynn.
Actually, it was just to say it's lovely to see you, Michelle. And I just remember all those decades ago, the domiciliary midwives, which you will too, Steve, and with Joan Donnelly. So, you know, how far have we come, really? So, thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Denise.
Thank you. And if Denise could come.
Yeah, she's right here.
I love this clustering together.
That's us. That's how we work.
Kia ora, Denise.
Morena, we've got to go to do a protest after this mining. So, you know, we haven't got much time. We're sort of
and good luck standing for mayor.
A day in the life of living in Hauraki.
All right. Over to you.
Okay, so tuatahi tēnei te mihi kia koe e hingi ke te hua kia tātou whakawhitiwhiti kōrero te rānei ko koe Stevie, ko koe tā tātou kai karaki, so tēnei te mihi kia koe, kia koutou katoa. Kia ora, my name is Denise, I'm from this whenua, I'm from Hauraki, come from a little village called Manaia, up the road. From Ngāti Pukinga, Ngāti Tamatera, Ngāti Maru, Ngāti Huarere, Ngāti Raukatauri. So that's sort of that picture. And I think I just wanted to pick up, because I think I sent my written submission in early sometime this morning, but I just want to pick up on the threads of the conversation from the conversation we're having with Catherine and Michelle. And I thought that the response to the question from my perspective as a wahine Māori from here in Hauraki is that what we're seeing isn't just misogyny and professionalised, politicised misogyny, but we're also seeing how that intersects with xenophobia when we're looking at how that plays out with wahine Māori and their whānau. So I've addressed that in my submission in terms of the intersectionality with colonisation, feminism, mana wahine, and all of those things. So I think for us here in Hauraki, and like I'm currently the CEO for Te Whāraki Mana Wahine o Hauraki, and it is fair to say that all of our Māori-led health and social services, which I established, led out all of them. So one is the Te Korowai Hauora Hauraki, the other is the services provided by the Hauraki Māori Trust Board. They are all currently led by Māori women who whakapapa to Hauraki. For our organisation in particular, 100% of our staff are from Hauraki, all Māori. 95% of them are wahine Māori. And picking up on Michelle's thread around we're all nameable and knowable here, and what we're seeing in terms of the mahi here
is that whakapapa also extends to kaimahi following in the tracks of their forebears. So if they were working in Women's Refuge 30 or 40 years ago, their tamariki are now coming through. But also we're seeing the intergenerational transmission of poverty in the acceptance of low pay. All of the things that you know, everything that you know. What's becoming more concerning about that is that we have and you heard Catherine talk about the basket, and the basket is one of our tangata treaty allies. So we're very strong on allies here in Hauraki, being really clear on who our tangata whenua and tangata treaty allies are, as a way to continue to weave solidarity, but what that looks like in the 21st century, knowing all of the disharmonies that we came through in the previous century around, what's feminism and what's manawahine and how do these things rub up against each other or they don't. So all of those are part of our reality, and coming to a space where we now know how to work alongside each other without taking each other's space, without having to tell each other's stories to leverage some other position other than let's just tell what does our voice tell us, what is our place in space in today's world, and this is how it plays out. So here for the wahine that I work alongside with, live with, brought up with, we're about 23%. It's in my submission. Gap between wahine Māori and if we're looking at male as being the sort of comparative, although I always have issues with that. I'm not really sure why we would do that. I only understand in terms of labour market, but nothing else. Well, I have to say that. And, I still go back to, and Michelle and I were having this conversation the other day, is that we are still looking at this whole view that, and that's why I use the terms misogyny and xenophobia, the deep-seated hatred of any person who happens to be a human being and in a female body that is different to a male. And what I find very concerning about that is that we are seeing increasing levels of family violence and sexual violence against women, and how that's playing out, a lack of response from male police officers, although I note that what they did with Tom Phillips, if that was the Māori whānau, we would have been found in the first 2 days. And that's real. That's real. So I think that we have the society itself, the social norms that underpin the devaluing and the hatred of wahine Māori and our allies cannot be underestimated. I do think that our academics need to revive some of their theories. Re-look at them, have a look at how they're shaped out in the 21st century, because I do think that we are missing some key things there, and they are to do with the transmission of hatred and the transmission of the dehumanization and the acceptance of dehumanizing women.
Wow.
And that's what I think we are looking at right in our face. And we're seeing it play out in Gaza. We're seeing it play out in Palestine. And we see it play out here in terms of poverty. What does poverty look like here? It looks like a wahine, whether she is Māori or not, living in her car and working at Pack and Save, and cannot afford to feed her children. So she comes to our service to use our pātaka kai, because she is no longer eligible for support or meets the threshold to get support from WINS. So we fill in the gaps because WINS doesn't provide the funding or access to the green card. Now that's a wahine, whether Māori or one of our allied families working and living in a car. And then there are the ones who are living in the mangroves and in the drain pipes.
Oh.
So, and that's a true story. So back in the day, we used to go camping and think it was great to live in a tent. Now MSD gives you a tent to live in. And that's to our women and children, and that's acceptable And this is what we're looking like. This is what it looks like when we're thinking about equity and pay equity and the distribution of wealth and resources in this country. And that's what I mean by all of these acceptable things. You know, a friend of mine once said, what we walk past every day and do nothing about shows our level of acceptance. And that's what we're looking at. We accept that women and children can now live in tents supplied by MSD, have a low paid job, and that's good, and she should work 7 days a week. And then OT will come and take her children off her because she's not providing them with the right care and a warm and stable house to live in. But they just provided her with the tent. That's what we're looking at.
Denise, could I ask you a question? Because the three of you are so well connected with how our community hangs together. But the funding that you're seeing from agencies, are you noticing funding cuts yet? Oranga Tamariki, MSD, you know, those sort of contracts that NGOs have?
Not yet, and that's mainly because of the funding cycle, but we'll start to see that happen as we move into the next financial. So, because some organisations here have got 3-year contracts, and some of those are coming up to, you know, they're just about at the end of their cycle. So we'll start seeing that. There's some talk around the social investment agency work, those, you know, all of those sorts of things. So there's a lot happening. I know of some of our organisations that we work quite closely with in Hamilton have had significant funding cuts from Oranga Tamariki, up in the millions of dollars. Yeah, you know, so those things have happened. We haven't seen it yet, but we are preparing ourselves for that.
Wow.
But not necessarily preparing doesn't mean we accept it, just preparing the battle.
Yeah, so you're in that legacy contract cycle that they're still funding.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Denise. Now, open for questions. I just took the lead question. Jackie, thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. That's again another powerful submission. When this 25 Equal Pay Amendment Act passed under urgency in May, do you think any of the ministers understood the humanity that it would affect, the faces, the people that it would be affecting? Yeah, just your comments on that first of all, thanks.
Because they did it the way they did it, I don't think they did. I don't think yeah, I think they're from what I saw, I don't think that it was a matter of considering people. It was how figures played out on a piece of paper. That seemed to be of priority, rather than saying, well, these figures are connected to people's livelihoods and the maintenance of their well-being.
And the Ministry for Women was completely excluded from all these secret meetings and discussions and development of the law. Yeah, I mean, I really respect what you've just said, Denise. That paints a very somber picture. And I think if New Zealand could hear that and see that, you would have huge allies, huge support.
Yeah, you know, we've got support here. You know, it's just, I think what happens in a rural community is, in our rural communities, gets overshadowed often by what's happening in the urban areas, and one isn't any better than the other, and or anything like that. It's just what we see here. People don't believe it. You know, like even trying to tell the council that, you know, people are living in the mangroves here, under the bird hide, and they all go, really? I said, well, it's only 2 minutes down the road.
Denise, is your local member of parliament an ally?
Jingos. He is the minister for ACC.
Jingos, I like that, Denise. Denise, just can I pick up on Jackie's question about allies? And in rural and isolated communities, it's always allies that we turn to. Who are your allies now? because you don't have huge funders like the old disestablishment of electricity trusts, and do you have to all go to the same
Yep.
lemon to be squeezed?
Yeah, yeah. And so partly too, I think, we try not to compete with each other. Like Michelle and I have been having conversations around how we're going to, and I think about it in the context of protection and thinking about that in a treaty context. How do we work together as a tangata whenua and tangata treaty organisation to ensure that whatever happens to us as organisation, our people who use our services, Māori, Tauiwi and others, still get access to the services they're entitled to. So we see our role, and I think it's fair to say the same, Michelle, as being able to protect, to put a korowai of protection around our services, as in how we work together, share information, not detailed information about whānau, but information around what we understand is happening across the political sector that is going to impinge on our whānau. And how do we work together?
I love your collaboration, and that's how it works in those communities. But a very powerful submission. If afterwards you want to add anything, please feel free to send through to our secretariat.
Can I just say, Stevie, to add to what Denise was saying, that the system now pitches us against one another, and removes contracts from me and gives them to Denise, or removes contracts from Denise and gives them to me. And that's, and in a small community, very quickly what's happened, So sorry.
No, that's helpful. Jackie, we won't take your question. We now have our next submitter.
Steve, is an important comment, please.
Yes.
Okay, girls, thank you for your submissions, very powerful. And your local member of parliament should be your ally. They're there to support you in the community. I suggest you send this YouTube video when it goes live to them to look at. Thank you.
Oh, good idea.
Okay. Thank you.
He won't meet with us on a lot of issues. He's not accessible, Jackie. It's just unfortunate. But we will always keep trying.
I'm sure.
Keep trying and send him the video link. Good luck.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, he doesn't care about
submission.
women and children. We have to face that. Thank you so much.
Right.
Good luck.
Bye.
Right. We now have our next submitter, who is Reddy Gordon, Cambridge, a support worker, and he's going to share his experiences in that challenge sector. Good morning, Gordon. Coming through? Sometimes there's a wee lag. Gordon. We can just hear you coming in.
Rightio. Sorry, I'm having problems maximising my screen. I can see.
No, we can see you well.
2-inch square. Okay. Right. Okay. I'm sorry that you can see me well. That's probably not a benefit to anybody.
That's fine. You look cheerful.
Yeah, I try to be. Yeah. Not cheerful about the pay equity stuff though. That's for sure. Yeah. One of very many, a very large group of very angry people, and I really appreciate the chance to present in front of you guys, and the fact that you guys have actually organised yourselves into a group with huge potential and clout. Yeah. So I'm not going to read off my submission because my written submission went to you guys, and
We've got
doesn't seem to be anywhere else apart from the ether. But the first thing I want to say is we have to stop this current government getting away with the dialogue they used and probably still use to say they saved $12 billion, right? It was not a saving. It was money that had already been put aside with an intention to be used to settle the existing pay equity claims, right? If Joe Bloggs saves money, they often save it for a specific purpose, like it might be in your rent account or your power account. If you use your rent account to pay your power account, you're likely to get evicted. If you use your power account to pay your rent account, you're likely to have no power.
Yeah.
What we'd like is for both of those to be invoked against this government and have no house and no power. And that would be a great solution. But the media seem to let this government away with that we've saved $12 billion. And I don't like that. And I would really like that to change. But the other things that are really important is the way they've set up this act, right? It's got to, for example, if you are able to complete a claim, you're not allowed to have any mechanism to review the amount for 10 years. And the way inflation happens in this country, even if it is kept to 2 or 3%, there's still a huge gap at the end of 10 years' time. And in fact, that's what support workers were faced with the John Key settlement, which we probably should never have taken. But who's going to turn down a settlement that offers that much of a rate? But it was certainly never a full pay equity settlement, and acknowledged that it was never a full pay equity settlement. But what it did do was limit us to being promoted over our wages being increased over 3 steps over 5 years. And basically, they were designed to keep us in line with, well, let's just use healthcare assistance as an example. They were designed to keep us in line with them. And by the time 2022 came around, to keep in line with them, we needed basically a $10 an hour wage increase, and their wages went up just not long after that. Yeah, so that's how far behind you can fall in a short period of time, and we should never have taken a settlement that it cost us 5 years to get it there. Now, one thing about that settlement, it precluded us from taking another pay equity claim in the intervening period until that act expired, right? So I'm an E2 member, and just what it meant for us is we spent a year lobbying with the Ministry of Health, who weren't really interested in talking to us. The Minister of Health told them in about 2021 to start talking to us, right? So they had a series of meetings that lasted about 6 months, and then said, we can't do anything for you. You need to do this. So we couldn't, it was to proceed with a new pay equity claim, right? So we couldn't proceed with that until July 22, right? We filed for a claim first thing that morning, basically, and set out, with the help of the then Pay Equity Commission, set out to proceed that claim, to forward that claim, and did so with probably record time. Now, the pay equity claims have milestones. That pay equity process had milestones that had to be completed and agreed with at each step of the way. And it was agreed with the State Services Commission, the interested ministries, the interested employers, and the interested unions. We met each one of those milestones, right? Just about ready to proceed to pay equity. And some officials of the Ministry of Health disagreed with the way the claim was measuring pay equity, right? So they proceeded to actually put in place, or they paid for a review. They probably paid big money for a review that was about 54 pages long, which I've read twice, cover to cover, which is one of the most futile experiences of my life, because it basically said nothing. And in fact, the only thing it really said about pay equity was the claim may or may not be undervalued, but we can't tell. This is a report that they commissioned while they held up the pay equity process, right? And the other thing it said, in about more places than it said that, was that we acknowledge that the current support workers' income structure is way out of line and needs urgently addressed. What concerns me about the inability to address it now is, one, that we can't proceed with a pay equity under the new Act for 2 reasons. One, we couldn't do so till 2017. And 2, if we did try to do it, we can't find a sector in our industry that's male dominated to compare it against. Sorry, you're on mute, Steve.
Look, I'm sure there's some people wanting to ask you questions. You've talked about the lag never caught up.
Yeah.
You're right, and process has been a hurdle.
Yep, for sure. Yeah.
Meriden is dying to ask you a question, Gordon.
Right.
Meriden. You're on mute, Meriden.
I could answer that question though.
I bet you could. You're on mute.
Thank you.
Good.
No, good. Thank you. Sorry. Gordon, thank you very much. And I think one of the really important things for me about your submission is its consistency with the submission from Tracy Martin from the Aged Care Association. I don't know if you had the opportunity to hear her or to look at it, but she talks about the parties were engaged in good faith discussions, and the time, effort, and resources put into progressing claims was very intensive. And then they talk about working groups being kept in a holding pattern with repeated excuses. So I just really wanted to thank you, because it's very useful for us when we get the bridge, when the people from the employer and the union side are telling us exactly the same story. So I just really want to reflect that back to you, and thank you very much for taking the time to do this for us.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to what we're saying and getting this format together for it. Two things I'd like to point is one of my fears is, and I'm sure Tracy shares this fear, is that we're not going to attract people to this industry, to these industries. There is no career path at the moment. There's no reliable education and training in it. And I'm sorry that my cockatiel thinks it's time to compete with me. But yeah, and I don't see where the next influx is going to be for our aging population, of which I am certainly a part.
And those pressures are growing.
Yeah,
thank you,
for
Gordon,
sure.
and thanks for taking the time and your caring in that sector. It is really worrying, but it's very consistent, as Dame Marilyn said. So thank you for that.
And I also find it interesting, as Marilyn pointed out, that it's very unusual for the unions and the employers to be on the same side.
Yeah.
They would actually come out more vehemently, but was a rumor flying the rounds that National were going to, before they ditched pay equity totally, we're going to actually say we'll partially fund it, and that would have sent some employers into deep spasms. Yeah.
Thank you, Gordon. Wonderful. And we're going to move on now to our next submitter. And this is quite exciting, because yesterday we had youth voices, and one was Taylor, who couldn't present, but she's come back this morning and she's going to fill in now, I understand. So is Taylor there? We'll just wait to see if she comes in. I've been advised that they were able to secure Taylor this morning. Taylor Pitta. Oh, here she comes. Kia ora, Taylor. If you take off your mute button, Taylor. Oh, thank you, Bronwyn.
Yes. Oh,
well done.
Morning,
Taylor. We're really thrilled you could find the time today, because we found that your young people's view so important yesterday. So we're just all friends, Taylor, and your friends would tell you that it was a very valuable experience. So over to you.
Have you already seen my submission?
Yes. you better remind us, because we've got all yesterday's submissions in another folder. But tell us your view, Taylor, of what you had in your submission.
I wrote about wanting to go into dentistry and health science.
Yes.
And I spoke about nursing, tea trades, childcare, and clerical positions being predominantly female professions.
And what do you think the impact is going to be with this latest law?
Just repeat that. Yeah, just go.
Mm.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
What do you think the impact will be about this pay equity change that was just changed in May?
Is this the one regarding how they tightened restrictions?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
what I think it's just going to make everything a lot more difficult for people, well, like me, who want to go into medicine and health sciences. People who are already in those positions, I don't think they're going to be well compensated for now that they're going to be, how do I say it?
So now that it's going to be harder to make claims. Yeah.
It's going to be a lot harder to make claims now that they've, because there were 4 women or 5.
Of 33 claims?
33 claims.
That's right.
And almost none of them were compensated for, and none of their claims were accepted.
So will that make you change your view of getting into health science or dentistry or medicine? Or are you determined? Huh?
Of course not. I hope that when I leave high school, these things are going to change. I have high hopes. I'd like for groups like the People's Select Committee to, well, do something about it.
Yeah, we're trying to. Yes, and we'd love to ask you some questions if you don't mind, and they're just to help us get a view of what young people think. And Ria's got a question, Ria Bond. She used to be a member of Parliament, Taylor.
That's cool.
Kia ora, Taylor. Ngā mihi nui for your submission, and it's good to see you here presenting your oral submission today. And I did want to pick up on what seemed to be a common concern with our other youth submitters, is that the Government Pay Equity Amendment Bill 2025 is going to, or likely to, affect their chosen fields of profession. And I know that you said that this won't deter you from your chosen profession, but with your peers, has it impacted on them? You know,
I don't think so.
No?
No, I don't think so. I think everyone's still determined to go into what they want.
That's good. That's reassuring to hear.
So, Taylor, what we're trying to do is activate enough people across the motu to change government's mind on this. That's political activism, and your young voices matter. And here's a great voice for you. Dame Marilyn's got a question.
Kia ora, Taylor, and thanks to you and to your colleagues. I think in your submission you told us you were 15 years old.
Yeah.
So definitely when I was 15 years old, I wasn't thinking of making submissions
to
anyone. So, you know, and I thought I started early. And I guess what I'm really interested in is where do you get your information about your feminist perspective that you're bringing to these questions? At the age of 15, what questions are you asking, and what information sources, and how is it at 15 that you've got such a sort of strong backbone already?
I watch a lot of stuff online, you know, TikTok, social media platforms. I'm fed a lot of information, so I like watching movies too. Um, discrimination against women is depicted a lot in the things that I watch.
Mm.
And based on real life events, I've learned, well, I've learned that women are treated very unfairly historically.
Mm.
I wouldn't
Mm.
say I'm a feminist.
Mm.
My teacher thinks I am. I don't think I'm a feminist because I just don't really like men.
Mm. Mm. We'd be really interested to know, actually, Taylor, what are those YouTube channels that have helped you sort of feel strong about being a wahine tour?
It's mainly TikTok
Mm.
and YouTube Shorts that I watch regularly.
Mm.
I have a really large screen time.
So what do you think about taking away access to YouTube and
Oh no.
for girls under 16? Okay, good question. Yes.
And can I just continue? So, this is again with your colleagues yesterday and with the group in Auckland. We're behaving like a real select committee behaves. I don't know if you've looked at any of the parliamentary ones. They give you a much shorter time to talk, but we're all old MPs, so we're behaving like a select committee behaves. And I wonder if this experience is going to make you feel like you can rock up to the 10-year plan for the Rotorua City Council, or feel enabled to make a submission to a parliamentary select committee in the future.
Oh, I would like to do that.
Cool. Great.
Great. Are there any other questions from the committee? Well, Taylor, thanks for coming. We were really worried that we missed you yesterday and didn't want you to feel left out. So Rhea was cheering and she was trying desperately, but it's fantastic that you came in this morning. And we just say good luck for your health sciences. And can I say locally, dentistry, we're very short of dentists, and we're working with the Māori Dental Association to recruit. So great profession for you to go into.
Just sorry, Steve. So I'd like to contact you about that Māori Dental Association.
Yeah.
I'll come and see the girls.
Yes, that'd be great.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Taylor, for getting away from your studies. That's wonderful. This is more important at the moment.
It is. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
thank you to the members. I think at the moment we haven't got Ariki Spooner is not called in at the moment, so it may be the time to have a short break, because our next presenter is at 10:20. All right with that? Good. Thank you, Tech. Well, Well, welcome back, everybody, and a good break and a bit of a catch-up. And I understand we've got the PPTA to actually outline the teacher's claim. And thank you, Joe and Fran. Great to have you here this morning. We've taken your submission as read, Joe and Fran, but we'd love to hear your key points and then time for questions. Coming in.
Morena, I think Joe might just be joining.
Thanks, Fran.
I will get started.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning.
Morena, I'm here now.
Good.
I'll hand over to you, Joe. Thank you.
Okay, aroha mai, these tech issues. Tēnā koutou katoa, ahakoa kua tūtaki kē tātou, e tika ana me mihi anō ki a koutou, e whai wāhi mai ki te whakarongo ki tēnei manu a PPTA te wehingarua me mihi ka tika. Ko Joe Brunskill tēnei e hoki mai ki Wainganui i a koutou, o te rā ko tātou mō te kaupapa kei mua i te aroaro, mātua nei ko te mana taurite pay equity. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora everyone. My name is Joe Brunskill and I'm an advisory officer for PPTA Te Wehingarua and have spent 4 years as advocate for the teachers' pay equity claim. I want to thank you for this opportunity to present to you again alongside PPTA Deputy General Secretary Policy, Fran Renton. We are here to represent around 30,000 secondary and area school teachers and principals whose access to pay that is free from sex-based discrimination has been extinguished by this government. Our members have told us that the government's actions will intensify the secondary teacher shortage and make it harder for teachers to provide for their families. The government's decision to cancel their pay equity claim has left teachers feeling deflated, disheartened, and undervalued. As other submitters have highlighted, the Equal Pay Amendment Act 2025 should not have been applied retrospectively. We will continue to push for justice for the claimants and for the restoration of the cancelled claims. During this oral submission, I'd like to focus on some of the technical impacts of the Equal Pay Amendment Act 2025 on secondary teachers. I'd also like to take the opportunity to highlight some of the challenges of the process under the 2020 amendments, as well as making some suggested improvements. I'd like to ensure that there is time for questions. As a pay equity practitioner, I'd be happy to discuss any technical elements of the process that we were following for teachers, if that would be helpful to the committee. First, I'll briefly discuss the impact on secondary teachers, while noting that this is covered more thoroughly in our written submission. A core issue of the 2025 amendments is the increase of the threshold for female-dominated from 60 to 70%. This amendment alone means that secondary teachers and principals can no longer raise a pay equity claim. However, there have been more women than men teaching in secondary schools since the early 1990s. Currently, secondary teaching sits at around 64% female-dominated. The latest OIA documents reveal that originally Cabinet was considering raising the threshold to 66% instead of 70%. This would have meant that secondary teachers may have been able to reach that threshold within the next 5 to 10 years. The last-minute decision by the government to increase the threshold to 70%, we believe, was an intentional action to prevent secondary teachers from raising a pay equity claim in the next decade. So, this leaves secondary teachers unable to raise a claim, even though the percentage of wahine teachers across the schooling sector, in primary and secondary, is 76%, and the fact that secondary and primary teachers currently have pay parity via a shared pay scale. Yeah. As we've raised in our written submission, even if PPTA Te Wehingarua and NZEI Te Reo Roa were to work together to raise a new pay equity claim for teachers, there are considerable risks. These risks include the increased power of employers under the 2025 amendments, including where an employer could decide that the work of claimants is not the same or substantially similar and shut down the claim. However, the main issue with raising a claim under the amended legislation is that the government's new imposed comparator hierarchy effectively prevents teachers from progressing a claim. It is impossible for teachers to find male-dominated comparators within the same employer, from similar employers, or from the same industry or sector who are performing the same or substantially similar work. This is because the education sector as a whole is female-dominated. For teachers to achieve pay equity, the process must allow the use of male-dominated comparators from outside the education sector. The 2020 amendments provided a pathway to this using a robust process, and this must be restored to the legislation. I'd now like to touch on some challenges with the 2020 process and make some suggested improvements. One of the weak points of the 2020 amendments, as I'm sure many other submitters have recognised, was the review process. While the previous amendment required each settlement to have a review clause, there was a lack of teeth or accountability in terms of maintaining equity with comparative pay and conditions. Without a strong requirement for regular review of pay equity settlements, it is all too easy for women's work to slip back into undervaluation. The 2025 amendments have now removed review clauses altogether. For a process to ensure ongoing equity is maintained, the review provisions must be strengthened. Another challenge under the previous amendment was the comparator process. As mentioned in our previous submission, it was extremely difficult to find employers who were willing to voluntarily free up their employees for significant periods of time. This put limitations on parties' ability to progress claims in an efficient manner. A further issue relating to comparators stemmed from the lack of clarity in the 2020 version of the legislation around comparator selection. For example, while official guidance documents stated that a comparator could be a role that had been historically male-dominated, this was not fully outlined in the legislation. Therefore, employer parties could disagree to consider potential comparators, such as accountants or solicitors, if the available department's employees were currently female-dominated. This could be the case even when the roles in question were featured in the repository data. Such a situation would require an authority or court decision to determine next steps. Looking ahead, work should be undertaken to ensure that potentially suitable comparators could not be so easily dismissed by employer parties, and further consideration of clarity around comparators in the legislation should be explored. To ensure a smoother and more efficient comparator process, the repository of comparator data should be continually added to, and this should include in-depth transcripts so that comparator data that has been collected can be more actively reused. The government should provide funding for employers who are willing to provide access to their employees for pay equity interviews. And this approach would also support private sector claims who may not have access to union support to progress a claim. Finally, I want to mention the need to protect funding for pay equity settlements. We've all now seen how easy it was for this government, under the cover of darkness and urgency, to take nearly $13 billion that had been set aside for pay equity settlements and spend it for their own purposes. Our understanding is that pay equity settlements were not meant to be influenced or impacted by government budgeting. Future funding for pay equity must have stronger protections to prevent this and future governments from repeating this hideous action. As the panel can see, there are a number of potential pathways for strengthening the Equal Pay Act 1972 to support the pay equity process. The union movement is willing and able to engage with this discourse, but we must be invited to the table. we must do everything that we can to ensure that every person in Aotearoa, New Zealand, has access to pay that is free from discrimination. Kia kaha, kia maia, kia manua nui. We're happy to take your questions now.
Thank you, Joe. A powerful submission. And we have a question here from first Lynn and then Jackie Blue. Lynn, your
audio. You can hear me now?
aye.
Thank you very much, Joe and Fran. Thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of your members, but for a very compelling submission. You referred to the growing difficulties with employer negotiations. Did you think they came from a direction that the Ministry of Education received? Actually an instruction to change their way? We've heard about stalling, you know, feeling people were being stalled, or do you think that it was a change in their own policy?
Yeah, kia ora, Lynn. Thank you for your question. We found that a lot of the ongoing challenges that we were facing, especially in the comparator selection space, seemed to be linked to cabinet papers such as the pay equity reset that happened. It seemed to be putting increasing downward pressure on the employer parties, such as the Ministry of Education, to reduce potential settlement costs. And we did see a shift in that space away from, should I say, better paid comparators, such as the ones that I've just mentioned in the thing, in the submission, to looking at ones that were lower paid. And some of the input there also came from the early childhood employers for which there was no funding. So there was a move to try and look at the lowest paid comparators.
Thank you. And Jackie, and then Marilyn.
Thank you very much. You note in your paper that there's an acute shortage of secondary teachers, particularly in areas of STEM, Te Reo Maori, and also teachers in rural areas. And you go on to the Ministry of Education has forecast 500 short in 2025 by 50, and 2026 and 330 in 2027. Do you think that forecast has taken into account those people that might have chosen teaching as a career, have seen the impact of the 2025 Act, looked at other jobs that might be better paying and elected not to go the teaching route?
Kia ora, Jackie. Thanks for your question. Sadly, no, I don't believe that to be the case. The data that we referred to in the written submission was the Ministry's 2024 forecast data. We haven't seen any update to counter for the additional impact of the cancellation of the teachers' pay equity claim. What we do know is that the data that we have that shows the last time that there wasn't a teacher shortage, because this has been an ongoing and growing issue, was when the pay was at a certain level in relation to the median wage in terms of relativity, to ensure that teaching was seen as an attractive profession. And we see this, you know, we were looking to use this pay equity settlement that we were hoping to achieve as a way to boost the pay, to try and attract more people and to try and retain secondary teachers and bring back already trained secondary teachers from the community who had left to better paying jobs.
So it'll be interesting to get a new forecast in the light of the 25 Act. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Marilyn. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Joe and Fran. Just a couple of real quick ones. In the comparator process, you talk about employers being unwilling to give time for the interviews, right? Are they public or private sector employers you're talking about?
In general, I think it's a challenge. We were having real difficulty in the public sector finding employers, ministries, departments who were willing to engage with us over that process. There were suspicions, and I can only call them suspicions, But at our end, it felt like perhaps there was also downward pressure from Cabinet in that space, saying, we want to reduce costs. We'd rather you didn't, but that's just a suspicion.
Okay. Bearing that in mind, I wonder if you'd be able to step out the timeline that you've outlined, like with actual dates of the negotiations, if that's possible. That, you know, and send that to us as supplementary material. And in that material, if you're able to advise us who some of these employers were, that would be really helpful.
Kia ora, Marilyn. We will work on that for you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Wonderful. Well, what a detailed submission, and what a huge impact in this sector. So thank you so much for your evidence too, and all the supporting submission, Joe, and the extra questions that we've got, I'm sure you'll provide.
Yeah, and can I just say, Joe, the material that you read to us is not all in your submission. So could we have that supplementary, please?
Yes. And a supplementary also, money or time, resources used and spent on progressing your claim to date would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
send as much
both of
through to
you
you as we can.
Yeah, for coming together. That's fantastic. So we're now moving a bit of a shuffle on the agenda. Grey Power have arrived, so we'll take Grey Power so that they can then move on. And we've got Colleen Singleton. I don't know if Colleen's got Alistair with her, but you're here, I understand, Colleen, and thank you. And we were commenting on what a great submission from Grey Power. So thank you. Over to you. And while they're coming through, we understand that the next submitter is there, but thank you for taking a back seat to allow Grey Power first. Very good of you, A2. Kia ora, Colleen. Welcome.
Thank you. And I have Alistair here with me. I'd better move over a little bit, make room for him so he can be seen. Thank you very much for inviting us to meet with you. And for those people who don't know me, I'm the current president of the Wellington Central Grey Power Association. So we're part of a large federation of 69 associations. And my background is in nursing initially, and I guess the highest role that I had in nursing was as the CEO of the Nursing Council of New Zealand.
It's quite important.
Thank you. I've done a number of jobs, especially in the regulatory area. And also I was a senior Hansard reporter at Parliament for a number of years. So I'm delighted to be here with you. And Alistair is very experienced in negotiations over up to 45 years. So he knows a lot about the health sector, and that's where he's been doing most of his work. So Grey Power's got a specific interest in this issue as it affects members who are both carers and recipients of care. So Alistair's going to make the presentation, and I'm here to support him with that.
Well, kia ora, and thank you for having us. And I also want to acknowledge my E2 colleagues as a former staffer with E2 and more recently with the Nurses Organisation. I want to start by adding some material that may already be familiar to you, but drawing to your attention that the retrograde legal position that we face is not new. And in fact, the Supreme Court of Canada overturned legislation from the Attorney General of Quebec as recently as 2018, and that's Quebec and the Alliance de Personnel Professionnel et Technique 2018 SCC 17. And I was rereading it late last night. Hopefully my union colleagues are on board with that already, because it's almost a back to the future case. And the decision, which was a majority decision challenging the move by the Quebec government to raise the bar for comparators and to limit the ability of people to then take further appeals. Their timelines are different ways, but there's some quotes here that I just want to share with you. And this is the first one. In 1984, the report of the Commission on Equality and Employment concluded, quote, that equal pay for work of equal value should be part of all employment equity programs. And of course, until Bartlett and Terra Nova, that was not the perceived wisdom in this country, despite the 1984 work done by the sadly now ceased Clerical Workers Union. The Canadian Supreme Court continued. That meant that adopting policies, quote, looking at those jobs in which women predominate and comparing their wages with those of men, if a difference is found, it becomes a question of trying to determine whether it's a legitimate or fair one. And here's the line that I think is well worth a bumper sticker. Leaving wage inequities in place makes women the economy's ordained shock absorbers, because the government's action was a shock. In our submissions, we've shared with you the experience of a notional. She's probably not a Grey Power member, but some of you on this call might well be. In fact, there is no wage barrier. But we shared the experience of Sally Smith, a notional worker, and really tying in with Colleen's and our concern is that we saw the transfer of billions of dollars, but from a public sector funded context. And that's why in our story of Sally Smith, because as a young man, I worked in the hospitality sector in a hamburger bar and was shocked to find out that I was paid the massive sum of 40 cents an hour by the then 30-year-old woman. And when you're 18, 30 seems very old. It doesn't when you're a Grey Power member. That I was getting 40 cents an hour more than her. So Grey Power has an interest not only in ensuring that people are able to retire or spend their senior years in a reasonable level of comfort, but if their funding is restricted, and I was at a U3A meeting, University of the Third Age, yesterday, and I looked around the hall and I realised that 2/3 of the audience were women. You're going to live longer than I am. Good on you. But I will still have earned more money. And it really seems to us that that's the core crux issue. We also are very concerned that the successive and previous legislation was flawed. It was flawed in particular in regards to the question of back pay. And as someone who was working alongside then Service and Food Workers Union colleagues, the PSA and NZNO on Terra Nova, I can remember at the time that the workforce was being asked to vote on what seemed like a marvellous $2 billion settlement, that I had an unease, as did other colleagues, that there was no back pay. If we find that a person has been underpaid under the Wages Protection Act, there are opportunities to seek 6 years back pay. And so in terms of our representations here, justice delayed is justice denied. And we do hope that those of you with political influence and leverage, should there be a change of government, that we actually see back pay on the agenda. And I must say, at a personal level, I was disappointed when Christopher Hipkins was asked, not Christopher Hipkins, that's a Freudian slip, when the leader of the opposition was asked about what they would do if they took power. Back pay is the fundamental issue. Also, people who were involved in the earlier legislation will have known that that was an issue that encouraged employers to make reasonable and early settlements. And I guess that brings us to the other concern. We're the Wellington Central Grey Power. Many of our members worked in the public service, but all those members relied on the private sector. And if I have a disappointment, it's a disappointment in the cancelling of the cases, the 32 claims. We didn't see female dominant private sector pay claims being forwarded. And that aligns with the fact that successive governments were tardy in bringing in equal pay legislation. We saw it in the Clark government and we saw it in the Ardern government, that for then opposition parties who were absolutely alongside grey power and working women at the time, it wasn't the first thing they did when they came and took power. It wasn't the second. Too often it was the last. And if there's been a flaw in the process to date, the flaw is that back pay combined with the inability to ensure that people are taking and promoting claims. Having done some work last year with the nurses organisation, I was very proud to be part of the team that enabled the nurses to begin to file claims in the home care and home support area. But it's in that private sector area that the Achilles heel lies. It's hospitality, it's cleaning and care services, it's the things that are not funded by the state, but the areas where women still predominate. Even if you look at some areas of manufacturing and production, women on assembly lines. So I do hope our union colleagues will embrace and take on that missed opportunity. And when we next best have legislation, we can do that. So that's really grey power's pitch. Mourn for the dead, but by heck, let's fight for the living. And our members are living proof of the women in grey power, of Colena's leadership and the other women who have carried that burden, and the men in grey power, many of whom have worked in undervalued occupations. So thanks for the time to prevent. Really happy to have conversation or open to questions. Thank you.
Well, you must be very powerful, grey power in Wellington, with the expertise of people like yourselves there. Thank you for a fabulous submission and some very powerful comments there. We'll go to questions now from Jackie. Jackie Blow.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Alistair. I wondered if that was the Alistair Duncan I knew from several years ago. It's lovely to see you again, looking well. It's wonderful. You mentioned something in Canada was overturned. Can you tell us just quickly what that was? So I'd like to have a look at that.
So this was the government of Quebec, which had passed legislation at a state level to limit the opportunities for people, A, to get back pay, but B, also to have claims reviewed. And in a majority decision, the Canadian Supreme Court, who of course have the advantage of a constitution that informs the position, said essentially that justice delayed is justice denied. So again, that is Quebec Attorney General versus the Alliance de Professionnel Personnel, and the references 2018 Supreme Court of Canada 17 SCR 464. And that was 2017. So in fact, we are back to the future there.
We'll get that. And we've got 5 minutes for questions. So there's Marilyn and Lynn.
It's very quickly, election year next year, grey power holds a lot of votes that represent a lot of power there. Politicians listen to grey power. Is your voice today representative of grey power around New Zealand, or are you as Wellingtonian both voices?
Well, we're representative of the zone, and grey power is made up of 7 zones. We have a very large number of associations, so we have the support of them. Unfortunately, the federation, the main body, didn't come in and join our submission, but they did say that they were very supportive of the submissions of the union.
So you had that's a very powerful submission from you. I do want to get the questions from Marilyn and Lynn.
I just wanted to say hi, Colleen.
Hi, Marilyn.
Good to see you again after many years. And I really liked your life course approach with the history. That's very, very useful to us. And I'm just looking here at a note I made from the 1972 debate that we needed the Act to establish undervaluation due to historical gender bias. And you kind of think to yourself, well, how much history do we need, to be going on like this? And I really just want to thank you, because it's gives us another whole way to think about it. It's very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lynn?
Thank you very much. I can honestly say this is the best communication I've ever had from grey power. So thank you for that. I know, particularly Alistair, your experience in the trade union movement, that we have members of the government, ironically, who are opposed to unions, say that unions are a bit of a waste of time anyway, but they argue that collective bargaining is another way of delivering pay equity. I realise this is a bit of a patsy actually, but what are your chances of getting that, and what's it shown historically?
Well, thanks for the question. If only I could refute it and say absolutely collective bargaining. What do we know about collective bargaining in New Zealand? We know that it's an all-time low. We know that if we take out the public sector unionised workers, we're looking at less than 8% of the private sector organised. And we know that in difficult economic times, private sector employers will hide behind the cost of living. I'm not going to live that long enough to see it. I doubt that any of us will. Collective bargaining is an important, but it's built on the statutory framework. And I think that was the other point we made in our submission about the Employment Relations Act, talks about the imbalance of power. And when it comes to gender, that imbalance is huge.
Could I just add to that? I think as a society, when I was young, we looked after our older folk. They came and stayed with us. We had our grandmother's children staying with us, and we loved that. And we've sort of lost that collective way of living because our society is so different now with people dispersed all over the world. So we're kind of very individualistic about everything. And I think we've lost the strength that we had when we were a more collective society.
Villages and communities. Thank you both for a fabulous submission. And Colleen, we're dying to know what's on the wee note behind you. Is it from the grandchildren?
Oh, yes.
Talking about the next generation.
The 5-year-old at the time was thanking me for inviting him to my birthday party.
Oh, well, that's what makes a village, doesn't it? So thank you both, and a powerful submission.
Thank you very much for having us. We're so pleased to be here.
Thank you. And we're now moving on to A2. And thank you, A2, for just standing back. And we've got Matt Danaher and Bella Barman. Matt and Bella. We're going to time very well. They should be coming in. I hear it then. And I hear they're going to be joined by a lot of workers. I don't know how you're all going to fit in, but we'll have a look how you do it. Coming through?
Oh, kia ora.
Oh, hello. Hello, Rachel.
Oh, hi, Steve. Matt and Bella set this up, but actually we have me, and we should also have Tamara Badley and Monique Behan-Kitto, and I'm not sure if we've got Pam King, but if those people could be brought up as well, that would be great.
Thank you for that, Rachel.
Kia ora. Kia ora koutou. It's good to see you again. So we're here on behalf of E2. My name is Rachel McIntosh, and I'm joined by our industry councillors who are union delegates and people working in the care and support sector to present to you our submission. And I guess the main point that we want to make is that this is urgent for care and support workers, that we know that the work is undervalued. That's been proved and tested. And I personally was on the assessment panel of the care and support doing that comparison with prison guards and customs workers and fisheries officers. This is urgent. We know the story. We know what the undervaluation is. That work has been done, and it's really urgent for us. And I will actually just now invite Tamara to give you her story. Kia ora, Tamara.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Tamara Badley. I'm a home support worker in Hawke's Bay now, but I was in Wellington as well. So my job basically means going into people's houses in the community to enable them to live their best life with whatever conditions they have. It can be anything from simple housework through to colostomy cares, catheter cares, palliative cares, occasionally walking in and finding them dead. In my 26 years of doing this, I've covered all ages. My youngest was 8 months old when I started with him, and 4 years old when I moved to Hawke's Bay. And the eldest I looked after was 108 when she passed away, still living in the home she was born in. So there's much I haven't seen or done. I can honestly say I haven't had a back injury at work. I have had a knee injury, but 26 years of it, and I'm still doing it because I enjoy it. It's the variety of people I meet that keeps me doing it. It can be challenging. It can be extremely rewarding. It gives you a little bit more independence and autonomy around your day, but the frustration comes with wear and tear on your vehicles and not actually being reimbursed properly for that. And also when people go into care or pass away and you don't get told, and you find out, when you turn up at their house and the family are there wondering why you're there, or the office, oh, we told you. No, you sent a text or an email that I never received, or you just didn't even bother. We're told time and time again, you are not to have a relationship with this person. But how can you not have some form of relationship when you're washing their bottom, you're helping them get dressed, you're right up next to them? It's a totally different relationship to anything else you'll ever have. And that's where there are some issues, but the main issue is our respect and our pay.
Thanks, Tamara. Monique?
Hi, I'm Monique Behenkero and I work in Gisborne. I'm a home support worker and I do the semi-rural run, so I do roughly 500 kilometres a week. This course is not properly funded, unlike fisheries who get vehicles. They travel roughly the same distance that we do. They also get paid to travel at a proper compensation. I look after complex and complicated behaviours. I specialise in stroke rehab and that kind of stuff. As I've been in 15 years in the job, I've been assaulted twice. I've had a few near misses. And being a lone worker, we have less protection than corrections officers, even though we do perform a similar role. I absolutely love my job. It's rewarding. I love going home at the end of the day knowing that I've helped people maintain their independence in their community just by helping them do the basic things like that we all take for granted, like putting on their socks, giving them compassion and treating them like human beings. With the current funding and the pay rates, we're losing staff massively. We're not attracting the younger workers to one of New Zealand's largest growing sectors of employment. If we fixed pay rates and funding models, we would be able to attract younger New Zealanders into these jobs rather than employing people from overseas to come and do the work. It's not that our people don't want to do the job, it's that they don't want to do the job for rubbish pay. The Christine Bartlett case, when that settlement went through, my children were only in their primary years. They were able to do every single sport that they wanted to do that I couldn't afford before that. Under this pay equity legislation that we should have gone through a year ago, we'd signed everything off. We had hit all the milestones. It had been independently reviewed with no problems that we could identify or they could identify. I could have been able to afford my own house That is my goal as 42-year-old, still trying to buy their first property. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't want to change my career because this is one I fell into and I'm so passionate about, other than my union work. But yeah, it's very disheartening. And I have been seriously thinking of taking a job at McDonald's and getting paid $4 an hour more than what I'm getting paid already. Thanks.
Goodness me. Thank you for the power of your stories, both of you, Tamara and Monique. The storytelling actually makes it very real for us.
Excuse me, sorry, Steve, we've also got Pam King, whose camera's off, so maybe you couldn't see her. I'd also like to just do a round off at the end, if that's okay. Pam.
Lovely. Yep.
You're on mute, love.
Yep, I'm Pam King from Invercargill. I work in home support. I have done for 30 odd years. I grew up in a house of 5 generations, and we learnt to care for the elderly. Yes, I do a lot of palliative care. I've got a lady at the moment in the hospice. She's only got a couple of days, and I've been looking after her for some time. So it's been a very difficult week. You're just trying to, do the right thing by keeping people in their own homes. It's just heartbreaking to be our pay equity to be stolen from us overnight. And what's happening is we can't get the young carers, and I'm supporting carers at the moment, young carers. I've got a couple that have been with us but they've got no qualifications. And what's happening is they're on the lowest scale, and they're on basically after costs, they're below the minimum wage. They get a little bit for travel, but they're saying they can't afford to, go to work. They're looking at other options, which is really heartbreaking. And it's going to load, if there's no carers, it's going to load up our hospital systems.
Yeah.
And be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, basically.
What happened after Christine's case in Invercargill, Pam?
Christine's case in 2017, the carers were able to buy new cars, replace their bombs, and they were able to spend time with their family. They were doing 70, 80-hour weeks, and they were able to reduce their hours back to 40 hours because of the pay increase, and massively put money back into the community. It was just outstanding. I always remember the smiles on everyone's face out there in the community and seeing their kids go to sports and movies and they couldn't afford before. It was just massive. And to be stolen from us last year when we were nearly there, it was just really heartbreaking for the next generation of carers.
The stolen generation. Thank you, Pam.
Yes.
And I think
just quickly round off. So you've heard those stories, they're really moving. I was involved in the assessment process. That was also really moving. And that was done jointly with employers and agreed every step of the way. And we used the assessment tool, Te Oruwaru. And I've also had experience of HAE, and the difference in what is valued under the assessment process that we used was quite stark. It really does uncover invisible skills, and you've just heard some of them, and you've also heard how it transforms lives. And that's why it's urgent. It's really urgent that this gets fixed and that it's not held up. That's the priority for us as a union. Kia ora.
Thank you, Rachel. Very moving, and I'm sure there are questions, especially about process, about being able to put your claim back. Right, Ria.
Kia ora, Rachel, Monique, Tamara and Pam. Thank you very much for your commitment to this cause and coming on to the People's Select Committee today. I want to pick up on, I think it might have been either Monique, or Tamara and also Pam. One of you said that over the last 12 months or longer, you've been working and preparing for your equity claim to go forth and everything was shaping up really well. And then the next minute it was stolen away from you overnight, but you'd continued in a timeline of preparing this. So do you feel like other swimmers have said to us, they feel like they were duped? They feel like that the government was still saying, come to our table. And in the meantime, we subsequently now know that this action had some premeditated, pre-budget outcome to stripping away the 33 claims.
Can I answer that? Yes, totally feel duped. The claims were laid on the 1st of July 2022, so it was under the previous Labour government. It was the first day that we officially could claim it after the Christine Bartlett settlement expired. And all the way through, there'd been delays and hiccups, and we were told to follow the process. One Minister of Health actually asked us if we could actually speed the process up. I don't know how we're supposed to do it when it's their guidelines. And then we had the change of government and were told that it had all been costed and it was all still there and it would keep going and to follow the process and there'd be an announcement. And then to get the announcement on the 6th of May by Brooke Van Velden where they were scrapping all 33 claims, it made me feel totally destroyed and wonder whether or not the work we'd done for the 1,039 days before that was actually worth it, because once again, we're the bottom of the pile and we're the ones that it's easiest to take from, is how it felt. And we did challenge Brooke and her colleagues to come to work with us for a day or a week in the different regions, seeing what we do, meeting the people we support. And her response was, no, it won't be worthwhile, which made me feel as though the job I do is not actually respected, and it's certainly not understood.
Thank you, Tamara. And thank you all. It's certainly respected by every member of this committee. I think your story of process right up until settlement is astonishing. Jackie.
Yes, thank you. Very powerful stories. It is absolutely urgent. I just wanted to ask, have each of you asked your local member of parliament to spend a day or half a day with you to see what you actually do? And what has their response been?
Yes. My local MP lives 2 doors down from me. She's currently on maternity leave and she doesn't want to know me. I've approached her 4 times. The other local MP for Hastings has told me she'll meet with me, but so far I've had roadblocks from her PA in setting up a meeting.
I have also approached Dana Kirkpatrick. She has agreed to go to, she agreed over a year ago to go for a work in the day of the life of an idea services worker. And that went absolutely nowhere. We've still got to keep applying the pressure on her to come to work. And we've even got the area manager signed off. It's just all waiting up on the MP now.
Well, disappointing.
We approached Penny Simmons. After 6 months, she had a wee meeting with us. Cancelled it the night before we were to meet, but we managed to get her to reschedule another meeting after 6 months. She refused to come out to work. She says she knew what we do. She knows what we do out there.
Just your submissions are very similar to the presentation from Grey Power. Might be good to activate Grey Power in your regions too, but I know how tired you all are.
We work with Grey Power.
Yeah,
Especially Mr. Duncan. I wouldn't be here without him.
Great. Lynn,
Age
last
concern.
question, Lynn.
Thank you. And I loved, it really moved me, the examples you gave about the effect on your children being able to participate more in the things that they really wanted to do. And it does reinforce the argument that we've heard quite a bit, that the increase in the money that you get goes straight back into spending in the local economy. And just wondered, is that your experience with your colleagues as well? Right down to probably a little bit more of a treat when you go to the supermarket and things like that.
Yes, I'll take Pam's example. In Invercargill, when the Christine Bartlett case came in, Pam was able to go and buy herself a new car. And that month, 40 of her co-workers ended up buying new cars from that same car yard. It is the best month that car yard ever had.
Wow, that's
Yes, it was
incredible.
Thank you, Lynn.
I had a colleague that was
Priya.
able to give up a second job and be able to cut back on her weekend work to spend time with her grandchildren.
I'll allow a last question from Ria.
My question's to Pam. So I live in Invercargill as well, Pam, and I was wondering if at all, since our MP hasn't come and shared some time in the day of your life, if you'd be prepared to allow me to do that.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Yeah, I can organise that.
We'll make
Thank
contact.
you. I have met you a couple of times, Ria.
Yes.
Yeah, for that. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you collectively.
Quick
Jackie?
comment. I suggested this to our first submitters, that you could take the excerpt of your presentation and send it to your MP, and challenge them to actually listen to it and respond accordingly.
Great. The power of your stories. So thank you all for coming, and doing it collectively is absolutely the right way. Your stories are compelling, and we wish you well, and we hope that this committee's actions and report are listened to and acted upon. Thank you. Keep hope. Right, we're moving now to St. Peter's on Willis. It's an Anglican parish, and we're going to be spoken to by Gail Duncan. I think if Gail is there.
Hello, greetings.
Oh, well done.
Yes, thank you.
Hello, Gail. Thank you.
Yeah.
You can take your submission as read, but we'd like you to speak to it too, and we love the questions at the end.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve Chadwick, for chairing the meeting today and welcoming me. And I'd just like to say a special thanks to Dame Marilyn for convening this panel to hear the voice of New Zealanders. That's just so important. My name is Gail Duncan, and I chair St. Peter's on Willis Social Justice Group. We are based in Wellington as part of St. Peter's Anglican Church, Te Aro. The mission of the Social Justice Group is to examine legislation and measure it against society's goals to achieve a fair and just society. The group is active in making submissions on government legislation and holds regular huis on political and social topics. We have made numerous submissions since the first 100 days in early 2024. Our concern is the rate at which the coalition government is pushing bills through under urgency, with very limited or no consideration of advice from government departments or the actual impact of the changes on communities and workers, and with little opportunity for input from organisations representing the most vulnerable. The main tenet of Christianity is to ensure the needs of the most vulnerable are addressed, that we care about the poor and the disadvantaged. The introduction of the Equal Pay Amendment Bill under urgency came as a complete surprise. We had heard the bill was introduced to the House under urgency earlier that week. And then on Wednesday evening of the 5th of May, as some of us were waiting to listen to David Parker's valedictory speech, the first reading was passed. And then the second reading. And after David's speech, the third reading. The Equal Pay Act of 50 years standing had been demolished in an instant. The democratic principles that we thought stood firm had been railroaded for the purpose of balancing the budget at the expense of the women citizens of New Zealand. On further review, as more information has been released in the past few months, it becomes clearer that the obligation of the Crown to pay outstanding claims and new ones arising were being critiqued a year earlier under a pay equity reset to reduce the pay equity public sector contingency. In July 2024, Treasury Fiscal Advice on Pay Equity Cabinet paper states, "We need to be conscious of the fiscal environment and wider pay equity landscape and continue to make hard choices to manage funding for pay equity settlements alongside other government priorities, while continuing to meet Crown's legal obligations." In October 2024, Clause 11 of their Treasury Report briefing states, "We consider there is merit in exploring legislative options to ensure pay equity settings are fit for purpose on an ongoing basis." It's then redacted and says short of full repeal. December 2024, Treasury Report options for closing the pay equity funded sector contingency. Clause 13, bullet point 3, advice on the scale and timing of potential legal changes to the pay equity framework. And clause 14, we understand that Cabinet is open to exploring significant legislative changes which could lead to material reductions to the cost to claims for funded sector providers. The approach not only breached the Bill of Rights Act, but was inconsistent with the International Sustainable Development Goals requirements for delivery of fair pay for women. The government starkly says to New Zealand employers, including the government, that while we can't afford to pay women at pay equity rates, we can afford to deliver tax cuts to landlords and concessions to some industries. The social justice group submits that the decision to make drastic legal changes to the pay equity framework by the Equal Pay Act Amendment Bill number 147-1 2025 to balance the books for budget 2025 is unprincipled and ruthless. The government has reneged on its obligations to meet the agreed pay equity settlements or continue good faith negotiations that were underway. This directly undermines the future prosperity of all women, as your previous submitters made quite clear, their daughters and granddaughters and future generations. While government's objective appears to be to balance the books and be fiscally responsible, it has removed $12.8 billion out of the economy, undermining the value of work undertaken by women, and wages paid to women in turn contributes to child poverty and holding back the next generation. How did this happen? It seems that there has been a long plan to undermine improvements to women's earning capability. In 1990, the then Labour government passed the Employment Equity Act to address pay equity and inequality in employment for women, Māori, Pacifica and workers with disabilities, and established the Pay Equity Office. That foresight to make provision for women in the workforce seems so long ago and was so short-lived as the Act was repealed by the incoming national government later that year. 23 years later, the effort and courage of Christine Bartlett, with the support of the Food Workers Union Ngā Ringa Toto in 2013, began to bring a claim under the Equal Pay Act 1972 on behalf of female employees, care workers, won in the Court of Appeal in 2014 with a pay equity settlement in June 2017 during another election year. Prior to the 2017 election, the National Party publicly stated its intention to write off compensation from the ledger and rewrite the Equal Pay Act such that women would never be able to make such claims again. This intention seems to have laid low until 2025, with quite a bit of preparatory work behind the sudden, unheralded legislative change to the Equal Pay Act. The Equal Pay Act amendment is part of a cascade of legislative changes undermining well-being, a word in fact no longer used in government discourse, not even in the new Social Investment Agency toolbox. Policy decisions should enhance well-being across the population. The austerity measures being implemented are counterproductively pausing the economy and stalling it, in fact, slowing spending and lowering business revenue and leading to a reduction in government revenue. The Social Justice Group would like to draw your attention to recent research in the UK that has determined that when investment for society is withdrawn, it leads to loss of opportunity for individuals, lowering life expectancy in some sectors of society, and poorer quality of life for a sizable portion of the population, impacting growth and business confidence. The government is forging a pathway to hardship for hardworking New Zealanders, now imposing an even greater burden on New Zealand women. The Equal Pay Act is a part of these austerity measures and the government's long-term plan to lower wages across the whole spectrum of workers. The reasoning, quoting, "This government is committed to improving the quality of regulation, reducing complexity and costs. The proposed changes to the Act," meaning the Equal Pay Amendment Act, "provide a better regulatory framework for a pay equity process." This statement is couched on sex-based discrimination. The grounds that employers, including government, will struggle to pay and threatening to reduce funding for the service activities concerned is avoidance of government responsibility for provision of services. Like arguments to reduce climate change obligations for businesses and farmers and not committing to investment in infrastructure. The legislative changes imposed on women by the Equal Pay Amendment Act embody and perpetuate discrimination and take us backwards. To conclude, Jesus is scathing about influential people who circumvent justice with trickery, which is what has happened with the development of and passing of the Equal Pay Act Amendment Bill, adding burdens and inequality to the already disadvantaged. A quick quote from the Bible, Luke 11:46. "Woe also to you lawyers, for you load people with burdens hard to bear, and you yourselves do not lift a finger to ease them." To close, as a fair and just society, we must pay women what they are worth and reinstate the pay parity obligations lost in the passing of the Equal Pay Amendment Bill for the benefit of us all and as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Open for questions.
Well, I just want to say, wow, actually. And we would love a copy of what you've just read to us. It was fantastic submission. Thank you, Gail.
Okay.
And we've got a question from Marilyn.
Marilyn. I welcome your question, Marilyn.
I'm just getting myself unmuted here. Gail, in my university years at Victoria, I was a member of the St. Peter's congregation.
Wow.
And I remember the coffee shop next door, Catacombs.
Yeah.
So I know that, and Godfrey Wilson and Bob Scott were the clerics at the time. So I know that St. Peter's has been engaged in this work for a very long time. And I was comfortable there. It was a highly political church. So I just wanted to say that I was also going to just ask for a copy of all your notes. And asking for all you can. This is not, I'm not defending anybody at all right? Not defending anybody at all. But I just want to make a small correction. So on the 29th of August 1972, Sir John Marshall said, "It is a significant forward move in the social legislation of this country, and it will be recognised as a landmark in our social history. It's a matter of social justice." So Sir John Marshall was the Prime Minister in 1972 when the 1972 equal pay legislation came in. And if you read the sections of that and you read the debate, it's also, so all of Parliament agreed, it's also quite clear that they differentiate between equal pay and pay equity. So we are going backwards far more than you realise.
Yeah.
But also, there was a brief moment there, along with the heroic Human Rights Commission, where National didn't do the bad thing.
And I think that's very important, Marilyn, for us to put on a timeline too. Yeah, thank you. And a question from Lynn. Lynn.
Getting there. Sorry. Gail, thank you so much for your submission, your oral and also your written submission. You mentioned in the written submission the International Sustainability Development Goals required for fair pay for women, and your view that New Zealand's in breach of this. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what you see the repercussions being?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm not entirely sure legally if the Fair Pay, the Equal Pay Act Amendment Bill is in breach of the because there's a process that the bill goes through to examine whether it is or it isn't. So, but however, the undertakings of the new amended bill are well outside of the Sustainable Development Goals and expectation for fair opportunity for women to have employment and the roles that they do undertake being recognised with appropriate value. And in addition to that, APEC and other organisations are encouraging fairer pay for women to raise the standard of living across the board. And so this is very much a backward step.
And I'll allow one more question from Marilyn. Very assertive with a hand up there. No, she's... Marilyn, you had one more question?
No, I just forgot to take my hand down.
Good. Well, can I thank you for that submission, Gail? That was very powerful, and I think the compassion of behind your even bothering to do this when we all feel a bit powerless at the moment gives us the energy to keep going with this People's Committee. Thank you, Gail.
I didn't know. Who shall I send the?
They'll be in touch with you. They'll give you their contact. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Gail.
Bye for now.
A lot of work there. Right. We're now moving to the New Zealand Centre for Workplace Inclusion, Te Uru Tangata. And I think we've got Joanna Smith.
Marietta, hi.
Oh, Marietta.
Yeah, kia ora koutou.
Morena.
Morena, thank you so very much for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Marietta Smith. I'm the Chief Executive of Te Uru Tangata, the Centre for Workplace Inclusion. Our organisation exists to support employers to create inclusive workplaces across Aotearoa, where talent is recognised, contribution is valid and equity is possible. But I speak to you today not just in that professional capacity. I also want to speak to you at the moment that is very deeply significant to me, both in terms of where we find ourselves as an organisation and my own personal history. Firstly, in terms of our organisation, Te Uru Tangata is the successor to the Equal Employment Opportunity Trust. We were established in 1992 following the repeal of the Employment Equity Act of 1990. That legislation was intended to ensure equal opportunity in employment, and it was repealed in 1990 by the then incoming national government. The Equal Employment Opportunity Trust was then formed as a partnership between public and private sectors to encourage the voluntary adoption of equal employment opportunities and policies as good business practice. And now, 33 years later, I find myself in the position of having to disestablish that very entity in the wake of another pay equity legislative rollback. And that symmetry for me is almost impossible to ignore. So that's a long arc of hope and of effort of an erosion, which brings me here today. And with that, I want to supplement this with the personal story, which is something that I briefly share because I think that we often fail to learn from people with lived experiences in contexts beyond New Zealand. I grew up in South Africa during apartheid, as you can know, no doubt here by the accent. This is still one of the most inequitable countries in the world. And I know what inequity looks like when it is allowed to harden into the structures of a society. I have witnessed how laws and how policies and how economic levers were used to entrench racial and gender-based disadvantage, and how that eventually collapsed into a moral failure that is and was so deep that it continued to reverberate across generations and still does. What I saw there has shaped everything that I do here. And I need to say quite plainly that some of the current libertarian policy directions that we are seeing in Aotearoa today carry uncanny echoes of that trajectory. The insistence on absolute individualism, the discrediting of collective responsibility, the framing of fairness as a threat to merit, those isn't just debates about economic settings, it's about cultural shifts, and it's taking us to a society where nobody feels safe. Not the groups that are historically marginalized and not the groups that are at the center of privilege. And I don't think that that's a future that any of us should be comfortable legislating into our existence. So you will have seen the detail in our written submission. I won't repeat any of that here. No doubt you've come across similar arguments across all of the submissions. But I do want to just highlight one thing clearly around pay equity, and that is that it's not just about dignity, although frankly it should be enough. Dignity should be enough, but it is also about economic logic. And what's happened with the Equal Pay Amendment Act isn't just unjust, it is bad economics. When pay equity adjustments are made, that money doesn't disappear into the offshore bank accounts or sit dormant in property portfolios. It goes straight back into a domestic economy. It goes into groceries, it goes into rent, it goes into school shoes, it goes into petrol. Every single dollar multiplies across the economy, and that stimulates GDP growth. Further benefits, stronger tax base that can help public services and fiscal pressure, improved workforce participation, all the investment that we made into education of women can be returned in that investment. Better return on education, lower poverty and lower welfare dependence, and finally, better retirement outcomes. As we are a country that is aging, we should be very concerned about the fact that as our population ages, that we will have a big cohort of our aging population that won't be able to look after themselves and have the financial resilience that matters. What the Amendment Act did was to actually forego all of those economic benefits that we could have into the future. And yes, we have actually quite ironically over the last week seen a reduction in the pay gap that's been highly celebrated across the motu. by the very same minister that has repealed this legislation. And all that I would like to say to that is that pay equity shifts take years to show up in the data. And what we see now is the fruit is not the fruit of recent reforms. It's the delayed impact of past investment. So it raises a very uncomfortable question about what the data will show in the future once we've stripped away the scaffolding. So I believe we're at a crossroads, and we need to decide what the kind of economy is that we want to build for future. We are a very small country. We don't have the luxury of sidelining half of our population's economic potential. We don't have the luxury of eroding trust in our public institutions. We are better than that. And I really, really thank this committee for your commitment to the democratic process. And I urge you to recommend that we don't cement inequity into our society. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Well, thank you, Marita. You make us feel sad. And I'm sorry to hear about your position, but you gave some wonderful leads there about baking in the economic hardship. So we've got questions now from Lynn to begin with.
Just came off mute. Thank you so much for your submission and your story. It was very, very compelling. Just really a bit more to do with your organisation. Where do you get your funding from?
We do not receive any government funding anymore. We used to until 2024 we did, but as from this fiscal, we haven't received any funding. So we have a membership base. Wow. Which has been thoroughly eroded because of where the public sector sits at the moment in relation to the DEI rhetoric and the anti-woke and anti-merit kind of conversations that are happening. But we have worked hard to get ourselves to be sustainable for the next 12 months, and we are putting in structures that can help us sustain ourselves going forward. On a more fee-for-service kind of consulting type of basis.
It's very, very sad. Very sad.
It is unfortunate, yes.
Jackie, headphones.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I didn't really appreciate that the old EO Trust has morphed into your organisation, so it's lovely to hear from you, Marita. So I've just following up from what Lynn was saying, you are mainly private employers now, and any public employer has since parted company because of the government rule and law and so forth.
We do still have members in the public sector, and interestingly enough, out of local government, we get quite a lot from the public sector members at this stage. We engage with the individual ministries and government agencies individually at this stage. Some of them do, some of them don't become members, and we will support them then on their journeys. Having said that, the environment around diversity inclusion has also matured significantly over the last 30 years. So what we do and how we show up is very different, and that is a very different conversation to be had. But it is not just the pure training and research base, because there's so much that we can amplify, and we see ourselves more as glue at this stage than the owner of all related to EEO. I wanted to just quickly also touch on the reason why we're disestablishing. It is not purely financially, because as I'm saying, we have a way to keep us financially sustainable. It is as a result of the fact that by virtue of our trust deed, we have to have 50% of our trustees need to be government appointed by cabinet, and cabinet decided they weren't interested in appointing any trustees to our trust. So we can't operate within the confines of our constitution.
Goodness me.
Oh.
Right. Thank you for that. That's a little nugget from today. Thank you. And Marilyn.
Yes, thank you very much. Especially since the disestablishment of the Pay Equity Task Force, have you received requests from employers to assist them in various parts of the pay equity process?
No, not directly. In terms of our niche, it is more in terms of building workforce inclusion generally now. We do link with remuneration experts and pay equity experts. And when we do get requests for support, we link them up with them directly. Apologies. We have received quite a lot in terms of requests from how does this affect us? So we've been hosting some webinars, we've been hosting some training sessions around how it affects employers, but not in terms of helping them to become more equitable. The Mind the Gap campaign has done an incredible job in terms of raising the profile of pay equity amongst the private sector. And we've contributed behind the scenes to mobilizing some of that.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Marita. I think we're all a little bit shocked after some of what you've said today. And thank you. There's got to be hope. We've got to end on a ray of hope that we're going to make a difference. But thank you.
I thank you for your time.
Right. That does bring us to the... are there any further questions? And we can later go into committee. But could I just say that this morning, for me, chairing has been incredibly powerful. And I've just jotted some messages down that resonated with me, sort of, that not much has changed. It's cheaper to exploit. Charity won't create equity. Bit of a bromance going on. Access has been extinguished to process. There's a lot of consistency coming through about the process, about the comparators, the threshold and the review. I liked Grey Power also saying that inequities make women the shock absorbers of society. I thought that was very powerful. And the personalised power of stories from A2 workers was heart-wrenching, really, especially when they felt at the end that equity had been stolen and they feel duped. I like the invitation to come and work with us. We'll see how many pick that up. But the compassion too, this pathway to hardship that we heard of was very, very worrying for us. And the last concluding submitter, I think, is simply outrageous that the funding's been pulled because of a lack of cabinet support. So I thank you all. And I just want to say, while we're still here together, that the Honourable Leanne Dalzell's been watching on. She's got dreadful flu. So I think she probably can't even speak, but we mihi to you, Leanne, and hope you get well. And I just want to finish because when Leanne was chairing, she asked me to say a karakia at the end. We call it karakia mutanga. And I said, no, our work's not done. But I went seeking, and I went seeking some of my old contacts, and they gave me a karakia that I think is particularly fitting for today. And it's up to individual chairs until we've finished our process. So, and I'll explain it in English too. Kua mutu a mātou mahi mō tēnei wā, manakitia mai mātou katoa o mātou hoa, o mātou whānau, aio ki te aorangi. It says, our work is finished for today, not forever, for this moment, the blessing upon us all, our friends, our families, and peace to the universe. So I can send that to the committee clerks, and future chairs can think if they use it. But thank you everyone for a phenomenal morning, and also to our support team who are the clerks of the committee and our advisor about the juggling of timing and getting people through today. So ka kite, we'll go into committee.